Can you go next door? Has your next door neighbour got any decent Wi-Fi?
So when I said good, you meant bad then?
What was he thinking? Where did he think his car would end up?
Really skillful driving through the grass, I must say. But
Oh, look how weak he is. He's talking down on himself.
I'll get on the phone to the Brazilian police.
you're either giving pressure or you're taking pressure. There's nothing in between.
Hello, everybody. Welcome to the post-Mexico F1 show, sponsored by Audi. And, after the last few races, what a turnaround by Lando Norris. Now 1 point ahead of Oscar Piastri in this battle for the championship that still looks like it's hopefully going to rage until the very last turn of Abu Dhabi. Max Verstappen, although not finishing as high up perhaps as he would have liked, still got on a podium. And as a result of that, he now trails by just 36. It was 40 going into the weekend. Delighted to say I'm joined by Martin Brundle and the 97 World Champion Jacques Villeneuve, who was with us all weekend. Martin, we missed you out there. 2 words, though, police escort. And therefore, we were able to navigate that Mexico City traffic in a navigable manner.
Perfect. Good.
Perfect.
That's on the agenda for all the future Mexican Grand Prix. And we need it in Brazil as well.
Yeah, okay. I'll get on the phone to the Brazilian police, but it definitely helped us. Jacques, it was a good weekend, wasn't it? Enjoyed it.
It was gruesome, because the altitude, the heat, and you don't realize the effect of the altitude. You don't sleep. You walk around the paddock and you think, "Wow, what am I on the run here?" And no, you're actually higher than when you go skiing, and it really has an effect. So imagine for the drivers in the cars. And actually, that was disappointing. I saw some drivers in the airport at night. Hey, that must be so tough for you after such a long race to take a long haul flight. And the race was so easy because we had to drive slowly to salvage the tires.
So when I said good, you meant bad then?
It was great because of the result, and it was an exciting weekend on that aspect. Come on, we had a championship lead change, 1 point, Max that gets closer. It's all exciting. We didn't expect that for the end of the season, did we?
No, it was really exciting. I have to say, let's start with that and the championship battle. And Martin, I'd love to get your views watching on the weekend that Lando Norris had, because he was nigh on perfect from qualifying, quarter of a second ahead of Charles Leclerc, and then just drove off the distance on Sunday. What did that tell you about his state of mind right now?
Yeah, I thought it was an outstanding weekend for Lando. And, if we'd have seen that kind of performance from Max or Lewis or even JV there, we'd have talked about it in hushed tones because it was outstanding. And you often hear me talk about when I, commentated on championship showdowns, that one or more of the combatants, the main participants, seem to find an overdrive gear somehow. And that was Lando's overdrive. Max seems to have the overdrive engaged at all times. But I just thought, that quali lap, the perfect start, defending into the most difficult first corner of the year, heading off into the distance was just perfect. And just the sort of statement and confidence booster he needs right now.
That's what we were talking about, Jacques. We said it was a statement pole, but it was also a statement win, wasn't it?
Oh, it was a statement weekend. The weekends we're used to seeing from Max, and that we saw a little bit from Lando last year when he was fighting Max. And I guess the wake-up call for him was Baku. Not reacting, not capitalizing on a bad weekend from Oscar. And I think that put some cold water in his face, and he came back stronger, as if he was fighting Max last year. And then he's on a roll. He made a step Singapore, another step in Austin. And he was marvelous in Mexico. When a driver gets in that zone, they become unbeatable.
Yeah, and we talked about it afterwards, actually, Martin. With regard to, I look back at some of the conversations that you and I have had early on in the season where we are questioning the mistakes. I mean, think back to Canada and a few of the other races where Lando was just making these little errors that Oscar is now, and everyone was questioning, has he got the stomach? Has he got it up top when it comes to dealing with the pressure of a championship fight? And here we are now with 4 races and 2 sprints to go. And actually, we're questioning the other side of the garage.
Yeah, it's a pressure game. That's the same in any high level sport. It's mostly in your head in the end. But A year ago, I'd have said no with Lando, but he and the team have done so much work on this aspect, and just the way he's, battered away disappointment. Because Baku, whatever they say, Baku was a wasted opportunity. Obviously, the contact in Canada was hurt him. He couldn't do anything about the engine failure in Zandvoort, and he obviously couldn't do anything about getting clouted in Austin. But he's managing that. Even the booing at the end of the race, which I found somewhat bizarre, but and we'll probably talk about. But he's just finding a way to compartmentalize that, package it up, not let it get to him. And I don't, Lando of a year or two ago wouldn't have handled the start as well as that. I think he's really sort of completing the full set of cards there.
Yeah, Jack, before we come on to the booing, just a quick one on that and the turnaround in the psyche, if you like, of Lando Norris. I feel like when you interviewed him early on in the season, he was very open, he was very honest, and then he got criticised for that. Right now, I feel like he's kind of put the shutters down a little bit. And as you're saying, you ask a question, as we did afterwards, and he'll give you the straight back. He's just playing it extremely straight now in a different way. The smile's still there, but I think he's retreated into himself and found another gear mentally. Would you agree with that?
Yeah, I agree, and we are too quick to judge on the psychic of a driver just because of what we see on the outside. But that doesn't mean that's what's going on internally. And Lando was always very vocal about either his mistakes, even when they weren't. He was actually taking the blame. And everybody judged that as him being so weak and beaten and down. And I always thought, no, actually, being able to admit, to go out like that, to always take the blame, that's how you make progress. Only owning your own mistakes, and even the ones that aren't yours, that's how you actually step up, understand what can I do different so I don't get into that situation again. It's not a weakness, it's a super strength to be able to blurt it out like that. But in modern society and social media, you just get blasted. Oh, look how weak he is, he's talking down on himself. Well, no, that wasn't weakness. And we can see it now with the reaction, where a lot of other drivers that are completely expressionless, and we had the same thing with Raikkonen in the past. Everybody's saying, oh, Iceman, look, nothing gets to him. And that was totally the opposite. Internally, they were melting, but we just couldn't see it. And by the time we realize, it's often too late.
Booing's not a new thing. We don't have to go back far. It depended on which side of the battle you were on. But Lewis was getting booed in some places in Max strongholds, and Max was getting booed in other places that were Lewis strongholds. Right now, though, it was interesting. Probably not the right word, but it was certainly perplexing, let's say, to understand why Lando was getting booed. And yet we got the answer in the press conference afterwards, where a Mexican journalist, Carlos Jalife, I think that's how you pronounce his name, said the boos were a result of a Monza switch. And he put this directly to Lando. He said, we did a poll that you're being given the championship. Would you be prepared to return the 3 points that you gained from there? And Lando answered it quite rightly, I suppose. With 2 years ago, he could have won the race in Hungary, but he gave the place back to Oscar Piastri to win that one. We get accused occasionally, Martin, of being British bias. We know we're not. We are dealing with a British audience that we broadcast to. But Zach, there is absolutely no way that anyone's being favoured within that team.
Well, first of all, it wasn't 3 points because it's 6, because you've got to swap around in that respect. But I think McLaren will take the brunt of that, because I think they didn't manage the message well post Monza. And for me, it was an absolute no-brainer to switch them back, which we can talk about now if we've got time. So it's just odd that it was in Mexico, isn't it? But I learned a very, very long time ago, you do not tell fans what to think or what to or not to say. They will do what they feel, and so they should. That if he'd have had Sergio Perez off in the first corner 3 consecutive years or something, I could have understood it in Mexico. But so I think that's just a misunderstanding of the situation, and somebody asking a specific question, because it didn't make a lot of sense otherwise. But when we used to do the interviews on the podium, that I did for quite a lot of years. I've been up there with Nico getting booed. I've been up there with Sebastian Vettel getting booed, and it's quite something. It's quite powerful. It's quite off-putting, but that's the nature of sports fans, and they'll do what they want and they'll do what they feel like. But it seems that one was particularly kind of stirred up somehow.
Yeah, that was odd because I don't remember booing in our days, Martin, for some reason, or we just were deaf and didn't hear them. But it was an odd one because it didn't make any sense in Mexico. A British driver against an Australian in Mexico. Why should they care? There was no reason for it. And the Monza thing, I'm with Martin on this one. It's not just a swap. There's much more to that story, and it did make sense. So what's the big deal?
Okay.
Well, the only thing he needs to do is to win by more than 6 points over his teammate, and then nobody will care.
What's happening to Oscar, do you think, Martin, at the moment? Because it's back-to-back races now. As Jack was saying, actually probably stretches back to Baku. But these last two races in particular, yes, he recovered from ninth to fifth, and that was a decent end to that drive for him. But the damage was kind of done on Saturday, wasn't it?
Yeah, it's been done quite a lot in the last few races, and obviously Baku would have scattered his brain. That was a very difficult weekend for him, with twice in the barriers and the jump start, and it seems to have gone off the rails. Without sitting down and talking to Oscar, it's difficult to be fully accurate on this point, but I'm sure McLaren are checking that chassis, the aerodynamics, the fit, the setup of that car ad infinitum to make sure, because they want it. I really honestly believe McLaren don't mind which of their two drivers wins the World Championship, as long as it's one of them and it's not Max Verstappen. It's super important to them, and something's happened in Oscar's head. Have we seen any signs of this before in his previous sort of junior racing or Formula One seasons? That's worth looking into, but something's just gone wrong, and he's lost a bit of confidence, and the way these cars go into corners and how close the competition is at the moment, you only need to be a touch off, and he needs a very solid weekend. Has he got a lot going on in his ears? It comes back to what Jacques was saying a little while ago. We described him as horizontal for pretty much all the season because that's how he looked. It just seemed to have, and he always has been so calm on the radio, not letting things get to him. And suddenly that glass ceiling or that facade, whatever it is seems to have gone from him, and he's struggling. And rest assured, a team doesn't spend $400 million a year and have 1,500 employees and try to make one of their cars go a little bit more slowly. So everybody associated with Oscar's car will want him to turn that around soon, as in Brazil. And you don't suddenly, his wins earlier on in the season, his season, early doors was so astonishing. You don't suddenly forget how to do that.
No. Jack, what's your view on it? Actually, again, just going back to it, we're talking about momentum being important in sport, and Lando's got it late on here. The difficulty, I suppose, now for Oscar is how, with just 4 races and 2 sprints to go, does he wrestle back the momentum that Lando and Max, actually, to some extent, have gained over him? It's just not the right time for the perhaps a little bit of unraveling to happen.
There's a lot we could read into it, and we can only kind of imagine, but you see it in every sport. You have teams that will have an average season. I'm not talking racing now, in any sport. Then you get closer and closer to the finals, to the playoffs, and suddenly they're the best team out there. And why? For what reason? They were average all season. And teams that have been winning every game, they collapse at that. It happens all the time. We didn't have an extremely fantastic Lando early in the season. Not the Lando we had at the end of last year. And we kept saying, "Oh, that's because Piastri has stepped up. He's now on Lando's pace and even quicker." But was it actually Piastri stepping up, or Lando that just wasn't on it? He kept saying he wasn't very comfortable with the car, and maybe that made Piastri complacent a bit. When all you have to fight is your teammate, maybe you don't push to that last limit, that last tenth of a second. Suddenly we get Baku and we get Max that's winning everything. and Lando stepped up. Lando is driving faster and better than he's been all season. And Piastri is not stepping up. He was already at his limit. And when you do that, when you have to go that extra 2 tenths, and Martin will have had the same issues when he was racing. You suddenly you find problems in the cars that did not exist. When you drive within the limit, the car's perfect. It's easy. You drive, you save your tires, and suddenly you have to go a couple of tenths faster. You can't drive the car anymore. Everything is wrong. You don't know why. Because right now we have the same car. It hasn't evolved that much, so there's no reason for it to be driven differently. Same tires, it's Pirellis. They don't change. Sometimes they're softer, sometimes they're not. The track is warmer and so on, but there isn't that big of a difference. So it just steps your teammate to step up a little bit, and you're realizing, oh, how do I do that? And suddenly you drive 10 stop, nothing works, and that's it. It gets in your head, and you just get slower and slower and slower, and you start inventing setups that don't exist. You start doubting your way of driving. You look at the data, and you say, oh, my teammate is 1 tenth quicker in that corner. I need to drive differently, and that's when it goes wrong. You have to remember what you were doing that was good and just step up a little bit.
I agree. Can I step in there? I completely agree with Jacques on that. And an old team boss of mine had an expression at high level motorsport, which I'm sure is the same in any high level sport. You're either giving pressure or you're taking pressure. There's nothing in between. There's no comfortable middle ground. And Lando suddenly started giving pressure, and so has Max. And Oscar started taking pressure. And so we've had that flip flop. And that, I think, is what we're seeing at the moment.
Maybe is it unfair of me to give you the same question that I gave to Jacques and to Jamie at the weekend? I was offering them 1,000 pesos if they were going to put it on anyone right now with this amount to go to the end of the year, Martin.
That is so difficult because it's I'll bet you 25 of my bags for life that one of those three will win it. Right now, after that performance of the weekend, I believe Max has got a lot to do, unless he has a few weekends like Austin. Because of the remaining 4 events, I believe McLaren will be faster in at least 2 of them. It's 2 against 1. Max doesn't have a rear gunner up there. And every so often, a Ferrari or a Mercedes is grabbing the bigger points, the top 3 points as well. I believe it's between the 2 McLaren drivers. And unless they step on their own tails and hand it to Max, because Max really effectively needs 12 or 15 points a weekend to compensate for weekends. I believe in Qatar, for example, the McLaren will be strong, probably Abu Dhabi as well. So to answer your question, I think Lando can take it unless Oscar can return to the form that he had earlier in the season, and providing they don't step on their own tails at McLaren.
It lines up Brazil well, doesn't it? I mean, because Max, look, if there's a bit of rain as well, that I don't know. I can't wait for Interlagos. I can't wait for Interlagos every year, but particularly this year, because there's, as we say, 33 points at stake, and you just never know with the inclement Interlagos weather. Right, let's get on to the next topic of discussion. Let's get into lap 1, and let's get into the penalties or lack of penalties and what might have happened. Shall we start? Where do you want to start? 4 into 2 at the first corner didn't go. It never goes. It never works with a 90-degree right-hander after that long drag. Max was forced wide. He got beached on a curb, narrowly avoided a wall, came back on. And Leclerc did the same, gave the place back to Lando, but not to Hamilton. Shall I start with you, Jacques? Do we think that those both deserve penalties?
Well, Max not, because he was ahead of Russell anyway, and he gave all the places back. He was next to the 2 Ferraris, and he just let them in front of him. So that was fine. Leclerc, yes, because he was actually behind Lewis. He didn't even try to make the corner. He stepped on it and realized, oh, it's my teammate. Nothing will happen to me. So the problem is that corner. If you have gravel there or a wall, you would be 4 wide. You would be 2 wide maybe, and everybody else would back off because they would know that there's not an escape road. Now they think, okay, it doesn't matter. If I just brake way too late, I might be ahead. I'll come out ahead. Maybe I let them by or not. Nothing lost. It's worth the risk, and that's why we have these crazy first corners on that track. That is an issue that we will have every year. Just drivers dive bombing on the outside, knowing that they can just go straight.
Well, that was George's point afterwards. It was also Fernando's point afterwards, and a few of those that actually didn't gain advantage. But do you agree with Jack there, Martin? I think when we looked at it on the SkyPad, certainly it looked like Charles Leclerc wasn't in control of that car all the way around the outside of the corner. Obviously, he had a little slip that he had to correct, and he went off. But should that one have gone back? Should he have had a penalty?
100%, yes. Max should have had a penalty because, but if you put your car on the far left in four abreast, it will go on the curb. But Max had no intention. You can see him actually accelerate. Really skillful driving through the grass, I must say. But Max made no effort whatsoever to take turns 1, 2, or 3. And that should have been a penalty. The geography out there is just hopeless. It needs zones. It needs a place you've got to pass through, and maybe even a zone where you have to proceed at pit lane speed limit for 100 meters or 50 meters or something to really make it almost as big a deterrent as a barrier in Monaco, and then they won't go out there. It's as simple as that. Max took the risk on the outside, knowing full well he could just bury the throttle and carry on. The sort of thing, if the fireproof boot had been on the other foot, Max would have been screaming about on the radio saying he had no intention of making that corner. He didn't. For me, at least Charles made an attempt at turn 1, didn't like the look of the way it was shaping up, so just ignored turn 2. And that, for me, was also a 10-second penalty. I might even have given somebody doing what Max did a drive-through to really as a proper deterrent to stop the silliness. And because then it all gets chaotic. And yes, they let people through. I mean, no doubt we'll talk about the Max Lewis turn 1, 2, and 3 thing.
Yeah, we're coming on to that.
I think it's a different thing altogether. But I completely can understand those drivers that were minding their business, actually staying on the racetrack, going like, well, hang on, I'm losing out here. I might as well just made my own racetrack up in the first few corners and gain some places.
Actually, Jack, come on, respond to that then, because you disagree here. But there was always an admission.
Hold on. I only half disagree. The thing is, intent is one thing, and we cannot put really intent in the rules. It's difficult. I was just going by the rules. By the rules, he was ahead of George, led them back. So by the rules, it didn't deserve a penalty. By the action, yes. So how do you proceed? You follow the rules, or you go with what we know is right and wrong? And right now, you just have to go by the rules because the rules have been put in place, and the rules are actually very badly written, like we've seen. And sometimes penalties are 50-50, and it was given to this one, and you just never know. So in reality, yeah, I agree with Martin. With the rules, well, you can't, because he gave all the positions back. And when he went in the corner, he was 3 wide. Then Lewis wanted to overtake Lando, and they ended up 4 wide. But he knew it was worth taking a risk, because whatever, just step on the gas and go through. So did it deserve a penalty? Driving-wise, yes. According to the rules, no. That's the difficulty.
Okay, so let's move on to the more contentious one, and that's the 10-second penalty that was given to Lewis Hamilton for what happened in lap 6, particularly at turn 4. Now, he was let off by the stewards because he didn't use the escape road, which was according to the race director's instructions. That wasn't the problem. The problem was leaving the track and gaining that lasting advantage at turn 4. But it all started, Martin, of course, at turn 1 when Max dived and he got to the apex first, overtaking on the inside, got his front axle alongside the mirror of the other prior to the apex, saying he's fully controlled to the apex. Verstappen on the grass at turn 2. He rejoined after the right hand into turn 3. Hamilton had the momentum alongside him at turn 4, but then locked up on the outside and had to go across the grass. So, well, I mean, when you look at it, and again, I just wonder, Karun put something up earlier today with regards to the 10-second penalty. It didn't feel like it was fair for what it was, but we know that something was put in place and written by the drivers earlier on so that it is a 10-second. However, if there's mitigating circumstances, and maybe we can take this all the way back to turn 1, then perhaps it could have been 5 seconds. That's how it's written in clause 5, by the way. And if you look to the driving standard guidelines, I just wonder where you stand on it. Did you think that 10 seconds was too harsh?
And, well, I think they're two separate incidents down there at turn four. So you use an interesting word, dive. Max made a dive down the inside because that's mentioned. So you've got the international sporting code, you've got the sporting regulations, and then you've got the driver guidelines, V4 of which was issued in February of this year. Read them again just before we did this podcast. And it for me, Max had done enough to claim the corner because he has to be alongside Lewis's mirror at the apex. In fact, he was slightly ahead of his front axle. So he owned the corner. He's then entitled to take a normal racing line. He's won that corner. And in a chicane, they will tend to take it based on the first corner, but they may consider apex 2 and apex 3. But generally, it's the first corner where you win the corner, and therefore you probably win the chicane. Now, did he dive? Was it over optimistic? That's in the regulations. And so this is the grey area where you need a referee to make the decision. You could also call that motor racing. Of course, you've got to dive up the inside somebody to actually overtake them, haven't you? So I think it's very grey, and overall, Lewis left the door open a bit. Max went through it, was under control, didn't lock his front axle up, therefore won the corner and was entitled to take the racing line. So I actually, in the end, I wouldn't have given Max a penalty for that. He then will say, well, I had to go across the corner grass on turn 3 because Lewis came up the inside of me. You can argue, well, did then Lewis claim turn 2 by getting alongside? So it's very difficult. It's very difficult to write, but they are the guidelines. I'm pretty sure Max will know them at least as well as any other driver, if not better. Down into turn 4, Lewis, I don't know why they don't all just go straight on in turn 4, to be honest. Follow the little road, back up a bit on the way out, not to have a lasting advantage. Why they bother taking turns 4 and turns 5, which are really slow, I don't know, because that little road looks really handy. Lewis didn't follow the route. Had a big advantage. Didn't really go to a lot of trouble to back up, did he, and hand it back again. So either the position or 100 or 2 meters or something. And so unless they're mitigating circumstances, that has to be a 10-second, not a 5-second penalty. So that's my clarity as far as my brain is concerned, but others will not agree, no doubt.
Yeah, I mean, that escape road's about the width of you could get a bicycle down it, but I'm not sure you could get an F1 car down it. But
you can loosely follow it, can't you? But if you can see it in the grass there.
Yeah, I mean, where do you stand on it, Jacques?
Yeah, deserved penalty. It sounds tough, 10 seconds, and it was a lot in that race. But the problem is, well, you couldn't give the place back to Max, obviously. Had he not cut across the track, he would have lost a position or two. The way he had gone wide anyway. The problem is he got out 100 meters with a 100-meter lead and just kept it. That's a huge advantage on the whole pack, not just on gaining a position or not. And that was the big issue. And he didn't even try or bother to actually slow down a bit.
That puts you out of DRS range probably as well, doesn't it? A little bit further around the lap. So, I think they're two separate incidents.
Well, Lewis in the media pen afterwards, ultimately, I feel very let down by the governing body. It's double standards, as you can tell, and it is what it is. And let me just read out a few that we've had sent into to Sky F1. Ivor Big, is that really his name? Double standards all the time, always same drivers getting away with penalties or slap on the wrist while other drivers get punished more severe penalties. Hamilton was ahead at the corner, says Kirsten Lee, 93. Charles was behind after the corner, and then he chose to peel off and completely cut the next corner, gaining an advantage, not giving the place back. He wasn't squeezed or pushed because he was there, still on track after the first corner. Don't understand why nothing's been said about that. James Carey, right, they screwed Lewis over.
Actually, I've got a question for Jacques. Jacques, do you think, I don't think he would do it intentionally because I don't think he's a dirty driver, but do you think Lewis would be that bothered if he hurt Max's championship chances, given 2021?
Yeah, personally, probably not. But it looks to me that he's finally respecting Max for what he's achieving. And the way he's been winning race weekend after race weekend. So I don't think he's as bothered that he would have been 2 years ago. Let's stay.
Okay, there we go. Right, we're going to take a short break, and on the other side of that, we'll wrap up all the stories from an eventful Mexico City Grand Prix. Quick word on our show partner, Audi. The philosophy of Audi Sport isn't just about winning races, it's about pushing boundaries. Everything learnt on the track goes straight into Audi's road cars, making them just as thrilling as they are refined. Take the Audi RS range, serious performance, but with a level of sophistication and refinement that doesn't need to be loud to make a statement. It's that perfect blend of power and precision wrapped in quiet luxury. Whether it's their powerful style or the RS Sport suspension with Quattro all-wheel drive for razor-sharp handling, Audi is constantly redefining the future of performance. Book a test drive today to experience the Audi RS range for yourself. Welcome back to the F1 show, sponsored by Audi, continuing in conversation with Martin Brundle and Jacques Villeneuve. Driver of the day, Martin, was Ollie Bearman, and we saw him afterwards, pretty emotional, hugging his girlfriend, his dad, David, always on hand with the old back slap. A lot of tears were flowing. He loved mixing it with the big boys.
Absolutely outstanding. I mean, if you give that young man an opportunity, he'll grab it like he did in Saudi with the Ferrari drive. And, kept his head under a lot of pressure, especially in the closing stages with Oscar Piastri's McLaren behind him. He put a move on Max, made it stick, didn't go four wheels off the road, just. And I thought, the moment that there's a seat at Ferrari for whatever reason, then Bearman should be in it as far as I'm concerned. I think he's outstanding, and he's learning fast, and he's making the most. And congratulations to Haas. What a job they do with a fraction of the people and budget that other teams have.
100%. I mean, they're only 10 points behind the Racing Bulls currently, going for sixth. The Racing Bulls actually drew a blank in both of those in North America. But for Bearman, he's scored in the last three, and he's qualified in the top 10 in the last three. And as Martin was pointing out, Jacques, it strikes me as if he's just developing very, very quickly now. It was, again, we say statement for Norris. It was a statement for Bearman.
Oh, yeah, he was impressive. I mean, he was great last year. He had a great beginning, then a little bit of a dip, and he was rebuilding himself. And that it's always nice to see when a driver goes back and comes back stronger, analyze it, study, works with the team, and figures it out. And that's what he's been doing. You see progression. And then you always wonder, okay, when will the progression stop? It's very promising. He was impressive this weekend because he was the complete deal. He was fast. Like Martin said, pressure didn't affect him. He's a very aggressive driver, but always under control. He has a tremendous racecraft, good 3D space awareness, and not many drivers in F1 now have that. You see it even with some of the top guys. Sometimes you see some moves and you think, what was he thinking? Where did he think his car would end up? Or how didn't he realize there were other cars on the track next to him? And he seems to have that, which is great. It's very promising for the future. And he's the kind of driver that seems to be better with the pressure, better in the big teams, better in the big league. He's better now than he was in the smaller categories. And that's super important.
12 points now, Martin, between the Racing Bulls, Aston, Haas and Sauber from 6th to 9th. It's an interesting dynamic, this one, isn't it? Because you've got 2026 on the horizon, but this is worth millions. And for somebody like Haas, who have the smallest budget, the smallest team, it's crucial. So how do they look to approach the last few races of 25?
Well, they'll be watching each other very closely, and then what they tend to do is strategize to focus on each other rather than best race pace or trying to nick a podium or something like that. That's what we tend to see happening in the closing stages. And it's millions from the FIA, from the Formula One fund, but it's also new sponsors and kudos, pit lane position. There's a lot of advantages. So, and I think even more intense is going to be Ferrari, Mercedes and Red Bull, to be honest, because that really is super important, because somebody like Ferrari to finish second to McLaren, solid, decent. Fourth, be an awful year for them. And you could say the same for Red Bull and Mercedes as well. So I think the stakes are frankly even higher towards the sharp end.
Okay. I mean, it does bring us on nicely, actually, to the decision that we were expecting post Mexico, which has now been delayed. Dr. Marco said, we're gonna understand who's going to be driving in the Racing Bulls alongside Max Verstappen. Looks like that's going to be put back to at least after Qatar, potentially after Abu Dhabi. They're going to keep us all in the dark. What of Yuki Tsunoda? Now, after this weekend, Lauren McKees was at pains to say he had a good weekend. The problem was a pit stop cost him a cast iron top 10. He was the closest that he's been to Max in qualifying since Hungary. So the second smallest gap in qualifying. Are they holding out? Are they seeing something very late that none of us have seen all season? Where do you stand on Yuki?
I don't know. I don't understand how a team can say, "Oh, he's had a good weekend." Better than maybe other weekends he's had, but is it a good weekend? He's still very far off his teammate. He's not bringing anything to the table in either in pace, points for the team, or helping Max for the championship. And he has a lot of experience. We've seen the best of him. He's already on the way down. So it seems that they're overprotecting him for some reason. But no, you can't say that was a good weekend. Is maybe his least bad, but it wasn't a good weekend.
Martin?
I think if the regulations allow, Red Bull should run a one-car team and have 3 drivers in the Racing Bulls might solve the problem, because anybody who sits alongside Max gets their head scrambled pretty rapidly for a number of reasons, because he's so fast and so good. But I think Yuki's had his chances, to be honest. Obviously Honda are moving away from Red Bull as well with that Japanese link. I think you've got to look to the future. The problem is for next year, there's such a dramatic change with the biggest ever in the history of Formula One, with the power units and the chassis, that you want experience, you want knowledge. I think Lawson's showing some potential and some upside. Hadjar, definitely. Ideally, I don't think you want to put Hadjar up into the main team. I think he needs another year. Lindblad's looking really good, but does he need a bit more experience yet? So it's a gamble, and they'll say, we refer you to Max Verstappen and Sebastian Vettel when we put young guys in, and if they're good enough, they can handle it. So I suspect it's a heavy discussion as to whether they're going to take a risk on Hadjar in the main team and Lindblad in the Racing Bulls, personally.
With regards to whoever goes up, do you think the change in regulations is going to mean that second seat, Jacques, isn't necessarily going to be, as dramatic a difference between themselves and Max, because it's a new set of regulations, everyone's learning, etc., etc. It's not 4 years of development towards Max's side of the garage.
For the main team, for Hadjar, the drivers, they are assigned to Red Bull. At the last minute, they can be switched from one team to the other, so they don't need to announce it. They probably know that they want Hadjar in that car, but why announce it? If maybe they change their mind in January, they can. So there's no point announcing it. He's driving for Red Bull somewhere, and then that's all. That's what matters. Now, the new regulations, we've seen it when Max had Perez as a teammate. Beginning of the season, Perez was on par with Max, but as the season got along, you had one driver, Max, capable of working with his engineers, capable of developing the car, of giving feedback and making gradually progress, making the car his, and the other side of the garage that just drove the car fast, but that was it. So at some point in the season, it goes backwards. And that's probably what will happen next season with a completely new set of regulations. Max will be quick, but not extreme, until he actually gets his hands around it. He works it with the team. He figures out how to maximize what he has with his engineers and his team. And that takes a little bit of time to build. We all talk about, in a situation like this, you need experience. And yes, I agree, but you need good experience. It doesn't matter if a driver has 20 years of racing. If he wasn't good or good enough, he still won't be good enough, and he still won't help you to understand the new regulations. He still won't help you to develop and test that car. So why would you put a known quantity that you know is not good enough? In that case, you might as well go for the young rookie or left field. Take someone and take a chance that will bring new energy and a new thought process to the team. Because what you already had, it won't cut it.
Yeah, I wonder what Laurent Mekies wants. He seems to me that he's one of these. He's very pragmatic, isn't he? As he come in, he's quite quietly going about his business. And actually, Red Bull have looked very steady. Maybe that's his management style. How impressed have you been with Laurent and what he's done in the shadow of Christian leaving, Martin?
Very impressed, of course, and he's handling it in a very mature way. Ego absolutely non-existent, parked, and we've seen a new type of team principle these days, aren't we? And that's why Christian wouldn't want to come back as a team principal. I think with a more of an engineering background seems to be the way to tie together these vast quantities of highly specialized people in a team. And he's got help with the politics with Helmut Marko and others. So I think it'll be a collaboration on the driving choice, probably more so than in the past, amongst the senior people in at Red Bull. So, but I think he's the right man for the right time in Formula One, and that's the way it's going now. So yeah, he's got experience at Ferrari, Racing Bulls, the FIA. He's got so much experience, Laurent, that I think he's hit the ground running, and I think he's handled it on a personal level extremely well.
Quick word on our show partner, Audi. The philosophy of Audi Sport isn't just about winning races, it's about pushing boundaries. Everything learnt on the track goes straight into Audi's road cars, making them just as thrilling as they are refined. Take the Audi RS range, serious performance, but with a level of sophistication and refinement that doesn't need to be loud to make a statement. It's that perfect blend of power and precision wrapped in quiet luxury. Whether it's their powerful style or the RS Sport suspension with Quattro all-wheel drive for razor-sharp handling, Audi is constantly redefining the future of performance. Book a test drive today to experience the Audi RS range for yourself. Welcome back to the F1 show, sponsored by Audi. Can we talk about the marshals on the track on lap 3? Now, Lawson, because of the collision, goes into the pits. The marshals come out under double wave yellows and try to clear the debris. But the FIA have subsequently apologised to Liam Lawson, because Lawson was on the radio saying, I could have killed them. What on earth was going on? It wasn't just that, it was the VSC at the end. I think there were probably, again, mitigating circumstances as to why that went out. But let's start with the marshals on track, Jacques. No one likes to see that. That could have been nasty.
Yeah, that's stuff from the 60s, 70s, 80s, and it shouldn't happen. Double yellow flag. You're supposed to slow down. Nobody slows down. They just, quick lift off the gas. You lose a thousandth of a second, and everybody's happy. Oh no, he slowed down. Look, he's under control. No, that's not slowing down. It's not, but the rules allow for that, so that's good enough. And you should never ever see a marshal on the track. Normally they kind of know where the cars are, but it just takes a pit stop and the car is not in sync anymore. So no, never ever. So that's a big no. What about if the marshal runs and loses a shoe? Stops, turns around. Like when you want to cross the road running because cars are coming. That's a stupid thing to do. Same thing there. You just don't do that. And the VSC at the end of the race, why? In which planet do we two races to two laps to go? There's battles happening. It probably wouldn't have changed the end result, but at least we would have seen a battle. It was completely nonsense, and mostly the car was completely out of the way, slowest part of the track, a part where cars decide to park. No one ever crashes there. We're not talking 300 kilometers in a straight line, a tire can blow up. Nothing can happen there. 2 laps to go. The marshals also have to take that into consideration because, yes, there's regulations, safety. There was nothing unsafe there, but you got millions of people watching an event. It has to be taken into consideration.
I think the thing is, and what they've said subsequently, is that the rear of the car was slightly overhanging onto the track, despite the fact that he'd looked to try and get it through the barriers, and it started smoking. So I think I mean, what did you make of it, Martin? But it was a shame for the racing, but obviously it's always safety that's the first consideration, right?
People, corner workers, marshals, paramedics who are out there for the driver's safety, and we owe them absolute safety back themselves. I hit a marshal in a downpour in Suzuka once and smashed his legs. And nothing I could do about it because I just aquaplaned off the track. But I'm sick in my stomach today thinking about it. In the 80s, Jacques was referring to I was in a touring car race in Italy, and I reported some debris on the track. Turned out to be a dead marshal somebody had hit, and it's just unacceptable. It was unacceptable to send them out there because they were, from what I could see, they picked up one piece in a runoff area and the biggest piece in the grass. What on earth were they doing out there? They didn't need to be out there, especially as they got across the track twice to do that. That was absolutely crazy. Um, and I don't think race control or the stewards had a particularly strong weekend, if I'm honest. But then I know it's difficult when you've got local people working trackside, you've got language issues, you've got, it's not easy. It's very easy to criticize, not easy to drop in around the world and have instant brilliance in every respect. The car sticking out the back, if Marshall's had to go into the firing line to push Sainz's car further, if they were exposed, we've seen marshals killed before. We've seen it happen in Melbourne. I would say better safe than sorry. If they had to move into a zone or put a vehicle into a zone that even remotely could be hit by a car on the track, then better safe than sorry.
Let's just finish then. I mean, I don't know. Every week that goes by, it ebbs and flows at the moment, doesn't it? I'm so excited about the end of this championship. I think it's just. Do we feel it's going to Abu Dhabi here, Jacques? Do you get that feeling? I can see it. I can see us having a classic end to this season.
It's better than we were expecting a few races ago, because having Max in the mix puts pressure on both McLaren drivers. They had it easy until now. It was one or the other, and with the papaya rules, they're all chummy. But now there's real heat on their heels, and Lando will focus more on Max and his teammate at this point with what he's seen. And same thing for Max. Max wanted to get closer to the championship lead, obviously, but he still didn't want Lando to be leading it because he knows he's the tougher one. He fought him last year, and it was a hard battle, and so he knows that it will be a little bit tougher now than what he expected after Austin, because he didn't recuperate that many points to the championship. Some good races are coming up for him, but still needs a little helping hand.
Martin?
I think this is peak F1. The grid is so close. You can score points from the pit lane or the back of the grid or even a podium. This is unquestionably the most competitive. I've been in F1 for 42 years, and it's comprehensively through the breadth of the field, drivers and teams, the most competitive I've ever seen it by a long way. And we think back in the 80s, whatever, oh, amazing racing, but that's through rose tinted glasses because, yeah, we can pick up some amazing stuff between Mansell and Piquet or Mansell and Senna or whatever. But races were largely dictated then by unreliability and crashing. Your main job was to stop those cars from crashing because they were quite evil, especially the turbo ones. So I think we're seeing a really high level in Formula One right now, and it looks like it's going to go down to the wire. So, I couldn't be happier. Really couldn't be happier. Sort of just observing it.
Yeah, I think we all echo those sentiments. Jacques, it looks like a beautiful day in Italy behind you. We'll let you go and enjoy that. It's not bad out here either. So, Martin, thanks very much. Cheers for your company. We will see you next up in Interlagos in a week and a half's time. So from us all here and the F1 show, bye-bye.